Welcome back to the Composing Made Simple podcast. On today's episode, we thought we'd talk about what gear you need to get started, and then we're going to add a new segment to the show. Obviously, it's not really new, but we're just going to make it a segment, is what new sample libraries that have come out, and we're going to discuss those. And then we'll go on to our picks of the week. So let's get ready for this episode, and I hope you join us, so let's get started.
Composing Made Simple. We talk about something new every show. Composing Made Simple. Grab a coffee, have a seat, and let's go.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good.
Awesome. It's been a while. We just want to say off the front, we apologize for not doing an episode in January. Just life happened. I was on vacation, and by the time I got back, the month ran out. So we're doing this episode. We apologize for not doing one in January, but hopefully we'll continue to do them monthly as we always do. So just a heads up. But anyway, so how's life been for you guys?
Pretty good. Go ahead, Curtis.
Busy.
Busy?
Doing all
That's
your
always
stuff,
good.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
New
it's been
year,
good, though.
new projects.
Yes, lots of stuff to work on, so
Excellent.
it's been great.
That's great.
Excellent.
It's always good to be busy. Well,
Indeed.
so let's get into our first topic. So what we wanted to talk about is new gear to get started. Obviously, since me and Curtis got started in this game, I mean even Curtis is before me, things have changed. And I mean, be honest, you don't really need much to get started today. I think that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, if you're professional, and I think as time goes on, I think what I want to stress here is don't worry if you don't have a lot at the beginning. It comes with time. You just start collecting things. Like sample library. And I'm gonna be honest here. I hardly use all the libraries I have. I mean, really, to be honest, it's gas syndrome that we've always talked about. You kind of just like, I need this, and then you use it, and then you never use it again. Do you guys fall
Yep.
victim to that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
I know Curtis is different though. Curtis likes to use his stuff that he buys. Like, and you don't really. No, I'm serious. Like, he doesn't really buy libraries that much, right, Curtis? I mean, you really stick to
Well,
what you use.
I buy too many libraries, just like everyone else. But I mean, I think that I try not to buy something unless I know like which little niche it's gonna fill in my, not just like what I'm doing right now, but sort of in my overall sonic world, I guess, So like even stuff I bought like a bazillion years ago, I'll still use it. Like I won't use it every day, I won't use it on every single track, but I'll use it. So I think when I'm looking at a library, I'm always thinking of it as, is this something I could use in, 45% of the stuff that I work on or so, something like that.
Right.
Does this do something more than is it more than just a one trick sort of library? And,
Yeah.
just like everyone else, I've bought libraries that are one trick and then I never use again, but it's not super a lot. And again, I'm one of these massive template people now. I'm back to the massive template. And so what I'll do is if it's real good and I really like it, I'll just add it to the template. And, then it's there for me right there in the template. And that causes me to use them more because it's like, it reminds me that it's there. Because, half
Right.
of this problem is just remembering what you own and what you don't.
Yes.
So if it's right there, and that's why I'm a fan of the big massive template sort of approach, is that you can sort of have everything laid out in front of you and sort of make intelligent decisions from there. So I would say the one area where I sort of don't always use them as much as I should is in the electronics, sort of thing like synthy libraries or
yeah.
Pulse or whatever. Those can kind of fall by the wayside. I've been meaning to just like force myself to like sit down and make 20 or so synth only tracks with no orchestral sample libraries.
Oh wow.
Both to like get better at that because that's such an important skill these days, but also because that would force me to kind of review my palette and sort of remember what's really good and start using it again. So
Yeah. Well, here's the challenge
Absolutely.
to you, dude. Write a whole track using synths. I'm
Yeah.
telling you.
He's
That's
gonna do a whole album of them.
Yeah, that's what he does. But I'm saying, like, that's the best challenge you can ever do, man. I did that a few times, like, because I was the same way as Curtis. Like, I never messed with synths. Like, I have Omnisphere. It's like that's the best synth that I have, and it's amazing. But I don't
we'll
use
get
it
back
as a
to in our
synth.
starter sample libraries. I was going
Yes.
to mention that there.
Oh yes. It's a must. I think Omnisphere is a must. But it's just so powerful, and And when you can get those add-on libraries from other people, third-party stuff, to add in like the unfinished, we always talk about the unfinished. It just like elevates it even more. Like you get so much more out of it, and
Hmm.
Mm.
and you just get some beautiful sounds. Like his Pangea. Oh God, I love that one. Um, and that was
It's
so.
great.
I actually heard that from Curtis first when he used to live stream
Mm.
many moons ago. Until he got
Back
busy.
before I had to work on things. Yeah,
Yeah,
back before I had to work
until
on
he got
things that I
busy.
can't show anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's so beautiful. It's got that Asian flavor, that kind of
Hmm.
flavor to it. So cool. But yeah, so I mean, I guess well, first off, I mean, if you're just getting new or getting started in the game, which I don't know how many of our listeners are, I think most of them are seasoned, but I guess we could just cover this. Is first you got to choose if you're going to be on the Mac or Windows. I mean, I think a lot of people don't talk about that. Um, I don't know if there's really as much of a war as there used to be, but I mean, obviously on the Mac, you're limited in some sense, obviously with upgrading and kind of customization of your computer. But if you don't care about that stuff and you just want to write music and you just want something that works, I would probably go down the Mac route. Obviously, they just released the new Mac Pro, which is I don't think if you're getting started, you're going to buy one of those. You don't need
Yep.
one of those. They're pretty penny.
We're the most responsible, best podcast in this
Yeah.
space. Buy the $50,000
Right.
computer to get
Yeah.
started.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at that thing and I'm just like, oh, geez, yeah, no way. I don't need that. I've been flirting. I mean, I do have a PC. I built a gaming PC about 2 years ago, and it could probably do music on it. I just have to upgrade the RAM because I only have I have 32, I think. You need about 64, I would say, right? I mean, would you guys agree with that? But 64 is probably the sweet spot now for RAM. Um,
I don't know. I mean, I when I first started, I was on an old pre-unibody MacBook Pro.
oh wow.
It did have 32 gig of RAM.
Okay.
And that was a challenge. You're
Mhm.
you're bouncing out stuff in place and you're sort of really working with it. But it was fine back then. I think these days there might be some libraries that really stress that. But I think that I mean, this is something whenever people talk about getting started that I always sort of bring up is that there's sort of a lot of value when you're first getting started to actually use something a little more limited
Yeah.
because it forces you to be a little bit more circumspect in your choices of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. When you sort of have, if you were to take somebody, say there's some kid and he's super wealthy family and his parents buy him the $50,000 MacBook Pro and the two $7,000 monitors and say, go compose, little Timmy. I can see that being very paralyzing and difficult because there's
Right.
so much that you can do and so much that you can buy and so much that you can and sort of getting into the business and getting into the craft of it is I think would be kind of hard, and
Mhm.
so I do think that there is some value, and I know that kind of it's hard to hear that from somebody who at this point I do this professionally. I've got servers in my basement that run all my all my sample libraries. It could be hard to hear that from somebody like who's sort of in that sort of easier position in terms of computer specs.
Right.
But that was really very good for me in the beginning, and it taught me a lot. It teaches you a lot about how samples work because you get to see how they break. I remember when I first bought Hollywood Strings back when it was $1,300. It was hard to use. It was hard. It was a beast. It took a lot. It took everything to run, and so that forced me to understand how the sample was working and to really, like hard drive speed. Suddenly
Yep.
became this big deal for me.
Before SSDs, man.
Understand, yeah, right. Like understanding what effects I could put on my chain because it would break, right? Like so
Yep.
fast. And you throw one Oxford inflator on there or one. Output movement or whatever, I wasn't using those back then, but you put one of those on the chain and suddenly on a real limited system, that's really pushing you to the edge. And so you learn all these tricks in order to kind of make the samples work for you. And that's really good. Even when you get to, if you become John Powell and you have, 27 computers running to make your template work or whatever, like that's still actually really useful to know because then when something isn't working, because sometimes they don't, it gives you a little bit more of a toolkit to pull from in order to get those samples working for you again. And from a compositional standpoint, I really think it's very helpful to be limited, because it really brings out your creativity when you can only use a few things. So that's my advice. I don't think you need a great, I would say 32 gig of RAM is probably useful, and these days it's not super expensive like it used to be. However, the highest end processor that you can afford, whatever you can afford, put it in there. We're going to talk later in our picks of the week that I've started doing a lot of my composition on an iPad recently, and that's like we're getting to the point now where the specs are starting to get ahead of the sample library developers.
Yeah.
We're not in that position where when Hollywood Strings came out and they were like SSDs, and you went to go buy an SSD and it was,
like $3,000
a gig. Yeah, it was very expensive. It wasn't hard, maybe $50 a gig.
It was a lot, man.
It was hard. That was difficult to do. And these days you can't buy a lot of computers without SSDs, which is awesome. That's great.
Oh, it's awesome.
So cool, right? And so if you can get an SSD in there, that's great. But just use what you have as best you can, and appreciate your limitations, and be thankful actually for your limitations, because they will sort of squeeze you into a diamond, as it by giving you a lot of challenge sometimes.
Well, you'll learn your own little tricks, that most people that might not even use. You'll stumble on something like, I did this to this, and or I did this to my chain and I discovered this cool sound. So yeah, I think
I don't always need to use legato.
There you go. Yeah.
People overuse those legatos so much, and it does not always sound good, because they do. So just, you can get so far in just a long, so far, and they're so from like a systems requirement perspective, longs are cheap, quote unquote, right? Like they don't take a ton of processing power and RAM. So
right. Yeah, and most libraries are capable today. They're way far beyond where they were just 5 years ago. The sound, you don't, because it's all built into the plugin now. It has its own reverbs, it has its own stuff, so you don't really need much. You can use all that, and the reverbs in the plugins are pretty damn good. They're not bad. Obviously you can go buy your own, and Valhalla, those are very inexpensive and they're very great. I have all their stuff, delay, reverb, and I use them on my stuff. So there's options out there now. 10 years ago, there wasn't as many options, I don't think, as there is today. Everybody's making a sample library. But Chris, you got anything? We're kind of hogging it.
Yeah. So not at all. In terms of specific hardware and tech, I'm probably one of the most minimalistic people, and that is not that's not to brag at all. It's because I'm not smart enough and not in I'm not savvy enough to know all the technicalities of software and hardware and stuff that I need. I hate reading about chords, and I hate reading about specs about different things. I just want to make music, right? So when I started in 2012 as a songwriter, I had my MacBook Pro, and that had 8 gigabytes of RAM on it. And when I started getting to orchestral stuff in 2017, that's when I started getting some libraries. And when I got my first Berlin library, I was like, oh, this is cool. But why is my computer crashing every 2 seconds when I play something? And then I realized RAM was the issue. And then that's when I realized, I actually need to invest properly in something, some computer that's, some system that's more powerful. So I decided to go with an iMac, which I got with 64 gigabytes, and that has given me very, very little problems, which is nice. And then on the side, I have 2 speakers monitors, which I barely use. Right now they're just more for show. I thought the idea would be cool to use them, but I haven't really yet. And I also, but that's because I have my KRK headphones, which are relatively flat, so I can check mixes and stuff on them. It's not too bad. But for the most part, I do a lot of my work on my earpods, and that's for a few reasons. Number one, because I just really like the way the balance is, and most people are listening on these type of casual headphones anyway, and I'll just use, my more pro headphones to check it at the very end if I need to. And usually in the car, it sounds quite good too. So aside from those, I have my Keylab 88 from Arturia, just a keyboard. And the weight is pretty good. It's even heavier than a real piano, which you don't get all the time. But it helps me feel more expressive when I'm playing in something. And yeah, that's it. So just a keyboard and 2 monitors and my iMac. Oh, I should say I also have an SSD. So I have 2. one specifically for more educational stuff. Like if I have any courses and stuff that I purchased a while ago, I can revisit those on one, and then the other one contains all my libraries. So they're both 4 terabytes, just in case, I need more space. I can always transfer stuff over. But yeah, that they're both very quick, and they haven't given me any problems. So yeah, that's basically my setup in terms of actual hardware.
Yeah, and I will say Chris's mixes are great, and he just told you what he did there, so he doesn't have much. And if you want to check out his YouTube channel and check out his music, because his mixers are really good. So you don't need much. When I'm rocking, obviously, like I said, I've been doing this for longer, and I've acquired stuff over time. Before this, I used to have a 2010 Mac Pro before they went to the trash can one. I'm limited with that one, and I had to upgrade that computer, and I put my own SSD in it. I think it was like 128 just for run the operating system and my programs. And then eventually I bought some external stuff to put an SSD in the card slots, and I just upgraded that one, and I used it as long as I could. And then I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, I upgraded to the 2013 trash can because I was waiting for them to release a new Mac Pro. It's like, dude, this is, it was 2013 is the last time they, put out a Mac Pro. And that's what I'm rocking right now. My 2013 trash can Mac Pro. It's got 64 gigabytes of RAM. And the only thing I hate about it is all the dongles. Like, I'm so glad they went back to the old format, but I just can't justify spending 50, I think the basic model is what, 10 grand? It's like 6. Yeah. That's not even a monitor. I don't even think they give you a keyboard and a mouse. Or something. Like, they're literally, it's bare bones.
I mean, and this is a good thing to talk about, right? Because like, I think a lot of people see that and they think, I can't afford a $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 computer, and that's true. That's totally true, and that's true for a lot of us, even who work professionally.
But hold on, one thing. I think one thing for Mac though, you get your mileage though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not saying this isn't a criticism necessarily. That's not a getting started machine. A getting started machine. Yeah. You could probably get started on a MacBook Air these days.
Oh yeah.
Probably the let's see. I mean, if I go to apple.com and I look at their cheapest MacBook Air, let's look at what their prices are. I mean, they're not expensive. And like Todd said earlier, if Macs are too expensive, you can get a great PC too. And you can work off Cubase, you can work off Digital Performer. I know a lot of I know that a lot of people working today work in things like Reaper, and some people work on Linux, for goodness sakes. So it just depends. But yeah, get what you can get as much as you can get in terms of specs for what you can afford, and just work from there. I mean, it's one of these, it's amazing these days what you can get, what you can do. I mean, it's $1,000 for the cheapest MacBook Air, and that's, you've got a pretty good processor in there. You probably need to upgrade the memory. Don't buy Apple memory.
I made that mistake.
Third party.
If it's serviceable, then the MacBook Air might not be serviceable.
iMac is a little tricky too.
iMac is serviceable, but yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff you can do. And, you could do it even on this base model with the 8 gig of RAM. You could just write each track individually.
Yep. The only problem is I guess when you're getting started, you're not thinking about templates. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, you could probably run a basic template, like an Albion, like Albion 1 or whatever, their new one. You could probably run all that in a template, because everything is an ensemble, you know what I mean? And you're not going to rock 6,000 tracks. It's probably going to be maybe 25. You could probably get away with that. And, well, if you're on a Mac, obviously you're probably going to be using Logic. And let me tell you, Logic is what, $200? When I bought it, it was like $600. So everything is accessible today. It is insane the amount of stuff that's available for cheap. Because I'm telling you, when me and Curtis, I mean, just 10 years ago, I bought Contact, the whole package deal. I think it was like $800 at the time in a box. I mean, now it's pretty reasonable, I think. And just like sample libraries were insane, man. They were like Curtis said, like Hollywood strings were like $1,300. I mean, things were over $1,000 back then. Like, I think the prices were starting to come down when I was just getting started. But yeah, it was typical. A sample library would run you about $500 or more. And now you can get great libraries for just a couple $100.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Another
mean,
piece of gear. I mean, just in terms of gear, another piece of gear.
mhm,
I encourage people. Not a lot of people agree with me on this, or not everybody does. I shouldn't say not a lot, but yeah, I encourage you to find a good pair of headphones because
yeah,
that can really change your production. Sony sells a pair of headphones called the MDR 7506
yep, yep, this one's
headphones.
yeah,
They're less than $100, which I mean, there are Beats headphones for more than this.
yeah, but don't use
True.
those.
You know, yeah, don't use Beats headphones. Use these professional Sony MDR 7506s. I can tell you right now, I have had a chance to be out recording, and I have seen them in studios. They're great. There's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with them. They're wonderful. They're cheap. They're, like I said, they're like $80, $90, which again is not $0. I know, I get it. There's nothing wrong with saying that. But I mean, for what you get for $80, it's really amazing. I mean, I use these Sennheiser ones that are many multiples of those, and there are not many multiples better than those. Those are really,
Right.
really good headphones. So I encourage starters to start with that, just so you kind of have like a baseline. Like, this is probably what these will sound like. This is a pretty good representation of what I'm mixing. If I were to go into like a super high end place with $10,000 monitors and all this stuff,
Yeah.
um, it's a lot of the way there, so it can help you sort of clarify a lot of things. Having said that, I think Chris has told us one time that he sometimes mixes on the Apple earbuds, and
Yeah.
his mixes sound awesome. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
you don't need
You
this.
don't need you don't need anything, man. Like everything, like Curtis said, like he's composing on an iPad, dude. We're probably 10 years out when
Mm-hmm.
tablets will be what you're gonna be doing. Like they'll be able to run sample libraries, and it's gonna be insane. And yeah, you don't need much. You just need a MIDI controller. So find something that you like. I think I started with oh my God, what did I start with? A cheap. I bought it at Best Buy for like probably $75. The old M Audio, like the 40, or was it 50 or 40 keys? Like the basic ones, the really basic M Audio ones, just to get you started. I bought that thing at Best Buy, and I used that forever until I upgraded to an 88 key. I mean, like literally, I used it. The only reason I upgraded to 88 is because like I wanted the full range. When you start using sample libraries, you'll start understanding this because like like sometimes the things are in the lower octave and all that stuff. So it's just like it gives you the representation of the actual orchestra on a keyboard. I need to physically, visually see it on a keyboard. It just helps me understand everything. And that will go along with mixing and stuff like that. It will all tie together somehow once you get there. Like, you have your low frequencies, your mids, and your highs. So it all makes
Hmm.
sense. The orchestra is like the perfect way to learn mixing because
Mm-hmm.
it's just all right there for you. If it doesn't sound right, then it's not right. And then headphones for me, I was using the Audio Technica ATH M50s. Now I think they have like M50Xs. Mine actually just pooped out like a little while ago, so I have to get some new ones. But yeah, you don't need expensive headphones. Like Chris said, he's using Apple EarPods. The thing you have to keep in mind though, when you are mixing on headphones, make sure they're flat. Because if you get like Beats or whatever, they have like an added bass emphasis, so you're not getting an actual representation of what your music's going to sound like in a car or in somebody else's headphones, like Apple earbuds or something like that. Because they're not giving you a realistic what do you want to say, audio image of it, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, it's hard to like make choices about,
yeah,
especially like Spectrum, if like the bass is being boosted because you can't if you can't take that out.
right, right.
So, yeah, like, and if you know what, even saying that, like that's the optimal solution. If Beats are all you have, it's better to be writing music on Beats headphones than to not be writing music because you're like, I need to buy these Sonys and I need to go work for
Sure.
6 weeks. Still use them,
Yeah.
but just and understand that like they're probably giving you kind of a slightly inaccurate version of what you're hearing. Now you know what Beats people are hearing, which I mean they're popular headphones, so
Yeah, yeah.
there's also that, and I just encourage getting started people to just use what you can use, and
Yep.
you don't need to go crazy because it's the skills in terms of even just all the way through the chain from conceiving of what you're going to write to executing the track that you want to write to mixing the track you want to write to mastering it, all that stuff, you have to do it so much in order to actually be good at it, that it's far better to be doing it than not doing it for almost any reason.
Right.
So it can be easy to be paralyzed by all the choices, but it would be better to be writing with note performer samples on your mom's laptop on Beats headphones than to be not writing with a $50,000 MacBook Pro and $1 million of sample libraries and $10,000 monitors.
That's true.
You're in a better position in the former place if you're actually doing stuff.
Right. And also, even the stock plugins that come with your DAW, like they have strings. If you can make those sound good, then you're good. You know what I mean? Like there's people I know that started with that stuff and still use stuff like that. And also, gear is important, but it comes down to the song or the composition or whatever you're doing. If it's not good, it's not good. I mean, as hard as that is to say, if your song's not good, if it doesn't connect with people, it's not good.
Right.
Nothing you throw at it is gonna make it good. So I would say investor, if you're just coming at this and you don't really have any musical knowledge, like theory or took music like me, like I just came out of it because I was a rock guitar player and I just kind of got interested into it. I took music theory in a class in college, and I've read books and stuff just to kind of watch YouTube. Like YouTube, there you go. YouTube is a great place to learn mixing and all that stuff. There's so many people showing you how to mix, so there's no excuses. You just gotta have the passion to go seek it out and go learn it. A few people that come to mind: The Recording Revolution, Graham Cochran, amazing channel. He focuses more on like rock music, but it doesn't matter what music you're doing. It's the principles and what he's teaching you, how to do it. So it doesn't matter the music; it just matters the philosophy behind of why you do what you do.
Absolutely.
There's so many channels, but that's the one that came to mind that I used to watch so much. So, and that helped me understand. I don't get bogged down and all that stuff, but go ahead, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you did a really good job of sort of transitioning us into that last little bullet point we have on our list here, which is the starting sample libraries. You talked about all the built-in ones for your DAW.
Yeah.
What are some starter sample libraries that we all think are really good places to like get started? Just in terms of like, this will give you a good palette to keep going. Todd?
Mine was Albion 1, but it was not the Albion 1 you can buy now. Spitfire has changed it like 3 or 4 times. I had like one of the original ones, and that's what I used. Because everything's like, for me, it worked for me because like I don't know orchestration. I didn't know any of that stuff at the time. The orchestra. I just knew what the instruments were, and it comes as ensembles. So I don't really have to think about flute one. You know what I mean? All that stuff. I could just fire it up and go and start writing music. So I think Spitfire Albion series is a great place to start, but things have changed so much since I started that there's so many different libraries now. I think pretty much every sample library company has an Albion, right? I mean, like Berlin has their series.
Yeah.
Who else? I mean, there's just so much. It's hard to keep track of everything. But I would say Albion. Depending, or I mean, obviously, I like Berlin. Their sound, and Chris uses their stuff. And he could talk to it a little bit more than I can. So you might want to look at that but it just depends on what you're looking for. And if you're looking for the epic hybrid drums and all this whatever stuff, if that's even still a thing, what's the one Audio Imperial does? Is it Juggernaut?
They have Jaeger, and they also have Nucleus, which is more orchestral focused, like it's pure.
So if you're looking for that, I would go that route more than Albion, because a lot of people I think buy Albion thinking that it's going to be that epic thing, and it's not. So you could probably do it, but like Albion 1, they've changed it again, so I have no idea. But those are the places I would look at first.
Yeah, so on my end, the main one that I actually used for a while was the Berlin Inspire series, and they have 2 carnations of it. So the first one is kind of more general purpose, classical cinematic orchestra. The other one is for more romantic and emotive type of music. So the second one is definitely more niche, but the main thing to keep in mind is that it's not really geared towards hybrid or electronic scoring at all, and it's mainly used for the classical or pure orchestral applications. So, but in terms of a really good all-rounder, like it doesn't have any soloists, but it's very consistent, and it's only 2 gigabytes in size, and that is Cinesamples Cinesymphony Lite.
Yep.
And it's it's just super compact, and it's perfect on a laptop, especially with like 8 gigabytes of RAM. Mike Patty did a full walkthrough and composition on the channel for that, so it's really good. And I'm using Nucleus now from Audio Imperia. Some wonderful soloists, especially like oboe, and the horn is also really nice. Strings are harder, of course, but everything in there is quite nice. And they have a classic and a modern mix, so you can choose between those styles as well for the more classical or more hybrid sound. So those are 3 very flexible options. Yeah.
Curtis?
So my recommendation is Composer Cloud from East West, because like a year of Composer Cloud X is like $280, which is like under $300, less than most sample libraries. And what you get with that is you get access to literally everything that East West makes. So this is, a very large array of libraries and a lot of different styles, from orchestral all the way to more ethnic instruments, to pop sort of stuff, lots of different stuff. And now it's different than other libraries in that you don't pay once and then own it forever. $280 gets you a year's access to this, right? Obviously, if you bounce out the track, it's not like your bounce goes away. If you decide that at the end of the year you want to if you're printing out your tracks, those are yours forever once you print them. So this is something I always encourage people to do. The great thing is, that's if you pay yearly. If you pay monthly, you can get it even down even further. If you can, get into their Composer program, it's $10 a month, right, for all of their instruments. It's hard to beat that in terms of just like access, easy access to really good sound. So I think that's a great place to start. If that's something you're looking into and you're looking at these multi-gigabyte downloads, hey, I'm going to spend a year downloading all this stuff. First of all, don't download it all at once. Maybe start out with just symphonic orchestra, because you get the full orchestra with it. That'll get you started on orchestra. You could also maybe, if you wanted to start with individual sections of the orchestra, try the Hollywood stuff. You're not getting, 47 million mic positions with this. You're probably just getting, I think, just one. But you know what? That's all I have. Two. You don't need it. Like, if you can be good with one mic, you'll be even better with 2. Yep. If you can be great with 2 mics, you'll be even better with 3. And then by the time you get to BBC Symphonic Orchestra, you have 40.
There you go.
But still, it's a good way to build up that skills, again, in a limited fashion, where you're not just presented with these huge things. And then
that's good point, man, because I used it too when it first came out. That was right when I started, and I used it for a while, because it's great because you're not throwing a bunch of money away. Because if you don't end up sticking with this, or you don't do this, or you go to a different musical path, you didn't blow thousands of dollars on sample libraries. So no, it's a great point.
Yeah, and I think it's frustrating for some people, because they sign up for this thing and they spend the first month downloading the libraries because they're huge. So just know that might happen, and just like plan for it. Maybe plan for 2 months to try it out, because the downloads can take a while, or maybe you're a university, go use your university's internet or something. So that's my getting started, like sort of real instrument sample library. And then the other thing I always suggest is Omnisphere, just because I don't understand how you can possibly, no one could beat them in terms of just like the amount of flexibility. You could use Omnisphere as your only synth forever. Yeah. You would never need to buy another one ever, all the way up until if you became a massive Hollywood composer doing huge big budget movies, scoring Avengers 17.
Using Omnisphere.
Well, yeah. First of all, I guarantee you hear your Omnisphere on that somewhere. I don't know where, but I guarantee you. And second of all, it's the only synth you ever need. Because
you can make it whatever you want. If you want it to sound like an old synth, you could. The thing is, though, it's a learning curve. Like I said, all this stuff is a learning curve. Basically, when you're getting started, you have to build the skills, mixing skills. If you're not trained, or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, even if you are a trained composer, writing on paper, there's a learning curve to sample libraries, because it's not going to do what you want it to do. You're limited to what that sample library can do, and that's another thing we should probably speak to. Um, there's every sample library, every developer does things differently. Some does legato good, some does staccato good. So that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you have to use a variety of libraries to get the sound that you're looking for, and that's okay. I thought you couldn't do that, which doesn't make any sense. But anyway, when you're getting started, you don't know what's right and what's wrong. And I'm gonna tell you right here, there is no right or wrong. Do what comes out of your mind. There's no right or wrong. Nobody's gonna look at you and go. Nobody cares because at the end of the day, they're just gonna hear the audio. They're not gonna see your session unless you share it on YouTube or something. But who cares? If it works, it sounds good, it is good. That's my philosophy. I don't get bogged down in mixing and plugins, and half the time I don't have any plugins on my stuff. I mean, to tell you the truth, I really don't. Maybe an EQ, because I want it to sound good. I want the music to be good. I want the song to be good, or whatever I'm doing. Because at the end of the day, nobody cares. Nobody cares what you have on your bus, or we do. We care. Your average listener, 95% of your listener doesn't care.
Absolutely.
And how I can prove this is go back and listen to records from the 1940s. You hear scratches and popping, but for some reason that music just grabs you. You forget about all that stuff. And like an old blues guy, the recording was probably on like who knows, a crappy microphone, and you know what I mean, probably reused tape, but man, his point's getting across.
Absolutely.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters. But for us, it does matter. So that's just one thing I just want to say, because that's something that I struggled with and still struggle with today, because I think we all focus on that. All the plugins, what libraries, it's like, who cares? What music are you writing? What's your music sound like? That's all that matters. If you want to get a job. I mean, sometimes that doesn't matter. It really doesn't. The industry's changed. I'm one of those purists. I think people that write great music should have the job, and should be a John Williams. He's a special case. John Williams is special. Because who knows if John Williams got started today, if he would even have a career. I mean, that's just the reality of it here.
Interesting, actually.
I'm serious.
That's a good question. That is an interesting question to think about.
I mean, maybe I can do another topic.
Hopefully that's a useful set of getting started tips, just in terms of things. I know it kind of boils down to use what you have, but I think that we've had this topic on our ideas list for things to cover for ever since basically episode 1, and we just keep having other things to talk about, and so we finally got to it today. And the thing that's so exciting about it is that it's not a hard topic, right?
Yeah,
it used to be that your getting started topic it's kind of hard to broach. You're well, first go to the bank, get a $13,000 loan, go buy 10 computers, and it was a really hard conversation to have. But the good news is that now, anybody can do it, and that's so great. That's so awesome that anybody can sit down and just get started, and we're removing those barriers, and they're only getting lower. So if even this is hard for you, there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. We want you to be part of the community, and the cool thing is that a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, it'll be even better because it's only getting. Yeah, it's only getting less expensive. So
this is a topic we could probably do every year, and it will change.
And it will change.
A lot of people always want to know what to buy. I guess first choose your path. What are you going to be? What kind of composer are you going to be? Start there. If you don't have a DAW, look at DAWs. YouTube is your ally here. There's plenty of composers out there that are doing YouTube videos. I have some, but I don't really do it regularly. Chris is doing them weekly. Curtis has some videos up on his YouTube channel. And I was going to say this earlier. Go to Curtis's YouTube channel and watch some of his old live streams that he has up on his YouTube channel. And you can see how far Curtis has come and what he used to use. And it's amazing because I go back and watch some of those and, just to see what it was like back then, because I remember, So there's wealth of knowledge out there. There's so many composers sharing what they have. There wasn't so much so when I got started, and I'm pretty sure when Curtis got started, there was no one. And then there's forums, VI Control Forum. There's a Discord that we have. Come on in. We'll help you. We'll show you stuff. But as far as get it like a MIDI controller. Just get a basic MIDI controller. You don't need fancy buttons. You just need something that works. You know, like I said, I had an old M Audio. M Audio, I think, are they still around? I think they are.
I see them from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some.
Just get like something less than $100. It will do. It's just a MIDI controller. It's just a button you have to press. That's all it is. I mean, I've seen people that get started. They're drawing out their MIDI. I mean, it's like more power to you, man. Like they'll just go into the MIDI editor and start drawing stuff, which is cool, I guess. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't know how they do that, man. But that's great. It's because it's kind of similar to writing on paper, right? I mean, you're just not doing, notation, but it's pretty similar. I don't think you need to worry about hard drive speeds and all that. Just get in that. Make sure your computer has an SSD. That's it. You're pretty well set there, and just a nice set of headphones. And I think you're good to go. And get one library, or do I would say what Curtis said. Do the East-West thing. That is the best bang for your buck when you just get started, because you have all these libraries at your disposal for $10 a month or whatever it is, $15 a month, and you have their whole basically. Anything that they've done, I think.
Yeah, the only thing about that I'm always concerned when I recommend it, because you're right, it's like hard to recommend anything else, because like just in terms of like the money you're paying versus what you're getting is just insane. Right. The other thing I worry about is just don't get too bogged down, because they have a lot of libraries. Yeah. So just focus on one or two core libraries, series. Like Hollywood series, Symphonic Orchestra. Symphonic Orchestra is a little smaller than Hollywood, so that's nice for download purposes, but it's not as good. It's really old. But yeah, just focus on one or two to start, and then once you've done a few tracks in it, then maybe try one or adding. Yeah. Don't just go nuts and like because you'll just drown in sounds.
You'll get lost, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be creating music. Yeah. So don't worry about all that stuff. Just make music, man. Learn and learn those libraries, master them. Learn how they work, how they interact, how they sound. And just mess with them. That's what I did for the longest time. And then you start learning, okay, well, Hollywood, woodwinds are not very good, but if I mix them with, Berlin woodwinds, I get a new sound, and now you're creating your own unique sound. I always look at it as a guitar. I'm a guitar player, so I come from this as a different worldview. It's like when I use pedals, I'm changing the guitar sound. I can make my guitar sound like a synth. What? I could show you stuff that's a guitar, like so I'm saying like there's no rules here, and so it's like just blending stuff, and that's what works. But I think we beat this topic down, and like I said, in a year from now, our opinions could totally change. But this is the best time to get started, because you don't need much. A laptop, some headphones, you can get a little like a 2-octave MIDI controller. I mean, they have those nano
absolutely.
Ones, and you're good to go. I mean, you could probably get started now for what, $500, maybe. I mean, well, maybe $1,000, I would say. Just something basic, a basic setup. I guess the laptop.
Probably $1,000. I think $1,000 you could probably do. The laptop itself might cost you more.
That's where it's going to get you. But most people have computers, so.
But if you already have a computer, you're good to go.
Yeah, at least a couple, no more than, I would say, 3 years old, maybe. I mean, 5, maybe 5's pushing it, but you might be good to go. Where you're going to hit your roadblocks is your processor speed and your RAM. If you don't have an SSD, obviously I wouldn't even try it. If you have a spin-up drive, but who the hell has spin-up drives? I mean, it's like I hear that like what? Like, I haven't had a spin-up drive in like 5 years, man. It's like, I understand like SSDs are expensive, but they're coming down in price. I mean, you can get $300. You can get 2 gigs now. So now's the time. But I just want to preface this. This is the devil's advocate, being the kind of person that I am. Now that everybody's getting into it, it's harder to get jobs, and so that's another podcast topic. But just be prepared. Now that it's so easy, everybody's doing it, and so now it's harder to stand out, and that's why we're stressing: find your own thing, do your own thing. You'll end up going farther in the long run, because you'll have your own unique sound, and you'll stand out from the crowd. So that's my 2 cents.
Cool. All right, let's talk about some new libraries.
it last time, but Junkie XL Brass is kind of the new orchestral tools library that's on the scene, and it's been out for almost 2 months now. And well, the response has been interesting. It's been relatively mixed in terms of the library itself. The response is mostly positive. All the low brass apparently sounds very good, and I've had to play with all the instruments as well. But most of the criticism has come from the trumpets. They think it sounds most people find it kind of synthy, and it doesn't really sound very full and lively, which is interesting. I kind of disagree. I personally like the sound of the trumpets, especially the shorts. The sustains are, yeah, I guess you could say a little iffy, but those might be addressed. But where most of the criticism came from was the player itself, and it's interesting, like the marketing move they did, like where they introduced this big library first before releasing their free library layers with the player. But it's probably just because of the time constraint they had with Tom. So, but apparently the player itself is causing a lot of crashes on a lot of systems, and so people have resolved to just not using it until an update is actually released. And you can see why Orchestra Tools is kind of trying to get this out relatively quickly. I mean, they said an update was coming a few weeks ago, but we haven't heard anything since. I mean, on VI Control, they are saying, okay, we're doing our best and should be out soon. So many people have their fingers crossed, but in terms of the library itself, it sounds quite good to me. And they got Alan Myerson to mix it as well, like Audio Ollie did with LA Modern Percussion. So just an interesting concept in general. They got all of the standard mixes and the Alan Myerson Junkie XL mixes as well, so you have some flexibility there. You have all your core cinematic and classical brass applications. You don't have any weird instruments, but you don't really need those most of the time. So yeah, that's kind of the big one. Just be careful. Oh, and one of the cool things now is that you can buy instruments individually, right? So obviously if you buy one at a time over time, the overall cost is going to be greater than if you bought the library at the whole thing at once, obviously. But if you just want to add one or two instruments to your collection from that, that's definitely a good choice. So
do they offer a bundle
then? Check that out. Right now it's either individual instruments or you just buy the whole thing. I don't think there's like buy two instruments for this price or something. I don't think they have that yet. Okay. But because I think they just have individual instruments listed at specific prices each. So
I mean, that alone is pretty miraculous.
Yeah,
that you can buy one instrument at one mic position. I mean, that's amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
It's like VSL, how they do it.
And that is worth. I know people are sad that the player's not quite. It's having some stability problems, but I mean, how much stability problems are you willing to put up with to be able to buy just the one thing and have that kind of flexibility? And that's I don't know about you, but I'm willing to put up with a lot at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of like Play when it first came out. People were
or the Spitfire players.
That's what it seems like. What happens? They come out with a library or a new thing, and it's like the new player.
Contact chauvinists.
Yeah. Give it a year. Give it 6 months, and that thing will be rock solid.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I'm pretty sure that when you buy the instrument, it comes with all the mic positions, but it's up to you which ones you want to download. And the cool thing is, if you load up a tree, a close, and a surround mic, for example, you can mix those down to one mic position, which takes up the footprint of just one mic position. So it's very custom in that way.
Cool. That's nice. Yeah. How much is one instrument? I mean, how much are we talking here? Like a couple hundred? Or?
Anywhere from like $70 to $100 or so.
That's not bad. That's good.
Something like that. Yeah. Something like that.
See, going back to our topic today, getting started it's so much different than just 5 years ago. I mean, it's so accessible and everything's come down in price, and you get what you need. If you don't need, if you just need trumpet, there you go, you got one, and that's great. That's great.
So another library I wanted to mention is a new library from Cinesamples, their newest one called Cinebrass Sonore. And if you haven't watched Mike Petty's video yet, and you're looking for 4 French horns and 4 trumpets that are perfect for melodic soaring lines, this is a library you're probably going to want to check out. It's just beautiful sound, as with most of their Cinebrass stuff, or all I should say. And it's just very playable. I had a chance to review the library on my news video, and it's very buttery. I like to use that word a lot, but it really is just like smooth. The sound is great. The legato keeps up. And of course, it comes with their legato speed knob and everything. And one of the things I appreciate most about these libraries is that they are not um, overloaded with articulations. You just get the bare essentials. So you get staccatos, you get legato, sustain, sforzando. Sometimes you get forte, piano, and then a few other miscellaneous articulations here and there. But it really is melody oriented. So that's definitely one I would recommend. And for a new library that's coming out soon, they basically told me around the end of March or maybe early April. There's a new library from Stress Self Sampling coming out soon called the Jade Ethnic Orchestra, and that's a library centered around Asian instruments, specifically Chinese, I think. And they posted some teaser content on their Facebook page, and it's very, very exciting personally, I think, because I don't really have anything like that in my collection. And the people I'm close to, I've showed my music to, they're like, it'd be cool if you could put some of your ethnicity into your music. I was like, okay, that's a interesting way to put it. And yeah, so
Okay.
that's something that I'm looking forward to. And it seems like they went pretty comprehensive with it. They said it's their biggest library to date, so that's saying quite a bit if they have a Flatus and I don't know, some of their other choir libraries that take up quite a bit of space. So it'll be exciting to see, but we'll find out in a couple months.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people raving about that. I checked it out, and I don't own any of their libraries. I need to look at them. I just, I don't need vocal libraries. It's like
Right.
I don't write that kind of music, so
Well, the overall sound is just a little darker in nature. If you know CSS, right? Like
Yeah.
it's darker. It's just less clear in a way. It's
Mhm.
more rugged and it's more rustic. So if that's kind of the aesthetic you want, then go for it.
Mhm.
But in general, I would say it caters more to I don't want to know, like medieval, kind of more more rugged or older styles of music, if you will.
Yeah. Medieval, I think you
Yeah.
hit it. That's what most of their libraries seem to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of go for that kind of sound, like the World of Warcraft,
Right.
kind of Elder Scrolls kind of thing.
Sure.
But yeah, Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Hey, I love this stuff. I'm not knocking it. It's like that's kind of what for me. But like I said, I haven't really paid too much attention to what they do. But I know some of their libraries that they've put out. That sounded great.
Mhm.
It just was it Wutan? No, was that Wutan or something? One
Yep,
of their
yep, John,
yeah.
yep.
And then there was
Wotan, right?
yeah. And there's another vocal library, and it's escaping me. But that's the thing. Like, there's just so many freaking libraries, man. It's hard to keep track of all this stuff. But it wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't talk about Spitfire. So,
Oh, here we go.
so yeah, they released Albion Neo. So I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I haven't really looked at it at this point in the game. Like, I love Spitfire. Trust me. We just like to be fun, here. I love Spitfire. I own a lot of their products, so I don't knock them. But at this point, I really don't pay attention anymore because I get too many emails from them and I just kind of zone out. This one kind of caught my eye. I guess we can just explain a little bit what it is. So their Albion series, if you're not familiar with it, I think is kind of like their all-in-one package kind of ensemble stuff, and easy to use, kind of just get going. It has kind of everything in it. There's strings, has woodwinds, all ensembles, and they usually package with like synths, loops, and textures, and all that great stuff, which sometimes I use for inspiration to use for a track. I'll pull out of Albion. There's some really good stuff in there, but I think this one's more chamber based, right? It's a chamber sized orchestra,
Yeah.
which is great. Like, I don't really have too much chamber stuff, and I think I have Spitfire. Oh, what the hell is it called? Not solo strings, but one of their little. It was kind of like a chamber size. It's a smaller orchestra size, but it wasn't the chamber one, and I loved it, man. That they sounded really good, and there's just something about that smaller size that you can get more an intimate sound. I don't know. It's just different, compared to like a full-on orchestra. You can kind of change up your textures and stuff, but I think I think they're going more for the. To me, like when I look at it, it's like I see mountains and snow, so I'm like, oh, it's one of those things again, And like, don't they already have about 50 of those? I think you made that comment, didn't you, Chris?
Yeah, that's my thing about Spitfire. Like, I love them, and I actually love, real quiet, intimate string textures. I think they're great. They do seem to sell a lot of them. They do seem to sell a lot of them, and I'm kind of, I just, it's not so much that I want to criticize them for quote unquote doing that again. I I'm not quite sure what this. I don't feel like I understand what this is. And you know what? Spitfire is very trendy, so maybe this is just not for me. This is for like
Right.
another. Like they're very good about knowing what is popular and what they need to make to continue their dominance of the sample world. So maybe this is like there's like a whole set of composers that need this. For me, I'm just like I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know. And again, like you, I love Spitfire. I love BBC. I think BBC is awesome. I think it's quite possibly one of the best things to come out last year. But this, I'm just kind of like, what is it?
Right.
Like, what does it do?
Mhm.
Like, it's got saxophones, and then again, this could also be like I own one Albion. I own Tundra because they have those like super quiet string
Yeah.
samples. If that sounds familiar to anyone, super quiet string samples. But that's the only one I own, and I just use it basically like a synthesizer when I need like a really intimate sound. I don't quite get it. But
Yeah. That's what I thought this was with
this works
Tundra.
for you-
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If this works for you, cool. I mean, great. It does have saxes in it
Mhm.
as part of the thing. It does have all their usual Albion stuff. I do think that those, what do they call it? The steam band thing is
Yeah.
pretty cool. The
Yeah.
loops are really cool. The loops in all their Albions are awesome.
Oh, yeah.
They do really cool stuff. That I like that eDNA interface a lot. I don't know. This one just didn't really make me go ooh. But it could also be just that this is not where I am in my life
Yeah.
right now, and there's a million other people that are, and that's cool too.
Yeah, I
you
don't
know?
think it's targeted for like people like you and stuff like that. I mean, I think it's kind of expanding on that Tundra idea, but adding newer instruments. Because I'm reading the instruments right here, 23 strings, band A, band B, and then it's got 6 woodwinds, so it's got flute, clarinet, bass clarinet, and like you said, 2 sax, and then 7 brass, so 2 horns, flugelhorn, euphonium, and bass trombone. So I think they're just playing on the orchestra and kind of trying to do new sounds. Like what can we do with that?
Mhm.
It comes with the Mercury synth engine, so I think that's new. So they pose this as the orchestra for a new decade. So I think they're playing on, like you said, they're trying to make a new modern orchestra. Trying to reinvent the orchestra that's been working for more than anyway. But no, I'm just saying, like, they're just trying to do something new, and that's what I always applaud Spitfire for doing, because they do push the boundaries. You know what I mean? In that sense, like
Well,
they're
and,
always trying to do something.
Yeah, I appreciate that they're not always like, here's our newest choir and it has 4,000 people in it, and here's our newest. I'm not that there's anything wrong with those libraries either, but I feel like a lot of people do those and they do them well. For example, like Junkie XL Brasses got these
Yeah.
huge ensembles. That's already done. That's great. They've done that. They've covered that. So if Spitfire were to say like, here's our brass library with 47 trombones, I'd be like, like
Well, ATO's
So I would
already top of that, so right.
Yeah.
66, they do have a 66 trombones library. Yeah. And 28 tubas or something. That's
Yeah.
I mean, again, I that's something you can only do in samples, and that's cool.
Yeah.
I just feel like that territory is very, very covered. So I guess it's nice to see a library of somebody who's making too many quiet and tidy, intimate samples. I guess maybe I should be more appreciative of that, I guess.
Right. I just wish. Here's one thing I'm going to say to the sample. If there's any sample developers listening to this podcast, make a trial for your libraries, like just a 7-day trial, so I can try it out to see if this is for me. Because let me play with it. Like just watching videos and hearing stuff, that doesn't get me to see if it will work for my needs. I just wish the companies would offer that, and you'd think Spitfire would.
I think for Spitfire, that's the labs. It's just that they
Okay,
don't really have
yeah.
it per library, so it
That's
might
true.
be nice to have. And it usually comes out like months later. Like
Yeah.
Airport Choir comes out in what was it, like February, and then
Yeah.
like the Labs Choir doesn't come out till like the end of the summer. It's
Right.
like I think maybe if the Labs Choir launched with Eric Whitaker Choir, you could sort of position yourself when people are like, hey, we want tries, just go try the Labs Choir.
Right.
So maybe it'd be nice to have like a labs sax or something to kind of like let you try this out. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why they don't do that, because a lot of people would just grab the trial and make a track and call it a day, and I don't know if there's a whole lot they can do about that.
Mhm.
But I mean, like, think about that. When you play with it and you actually like it, like, you'll want to buy it. Like, you know what I mean? You know.
I agree,
Um,
and I agree that you and me do that.
no, I,
I don't
I
know.
think there's something to that because you know, when you're just watching videos and this stuff's like, okay, this sounds cool, but will it work for me? And if you get it under your fingers and use it and you actually love it, you know, like, oh my
Right.
God, this is what I need. Bam, you're gonna throw down the money. Oh, and by the way, we should mention, since you mentioned Eric Whitaker Choir, it is 30% off for the month of February. So jump on that. I'm telling you,
Nice.
I'm not a choir dude, but oh my God, that library, man, I love it.
It is
Sounds
it is utterly
amazing.
exquisite. I
Oh, it's
mean,
amazing.
I will tell you, I can't really go into super detail, but it can sit with an actual choir recording.
Yeah.
Let's
Nice.
just say that it can live with a real choir recording, and you can't tell.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's amazing. And
Never had a sample
oh,
library, especially choir, be this good. It's
yeah, it's good. And I'm not a choir dude, but like it's great for textures and just like pads and like layering and putting effect. Oh God, I've been using it for some ambient stuff, and it's just like, oh my God, it's so good, and it just sounds so good, dude. Oh, and I'm not. I swear to God, I'm not a choir person, but there's just something about it, like the tone, the texture, and just the way it's voiced. It's so good.
all right. So let's move on to our picks of the week. My pick of the week is StaffPad, which is a new program for iOS of all things, for the iPad. So this is kind of a hard sell in the sense that it's it really probably benefits from the pro models of iPad, which are not cheap.
Hmm.
Absolutely requires that you have some sort of writing input device like the Apple Pencil. It also runs on Windows tablets. In that case, you also need whatever the equivalent is on Windows. I think it's just called the Surface
Yeah.
Pencil or Pen or something. So it does absolutely require that. Without that, it will not work. Do not buy it if you do not have one and don't want to buy a pencil or other, pen-based input device for your Surface. Or it runs on basically Surface or iPad. Um, but this is quite possibly the most extraordinary thing I've seen come out. And I know I say that a lot. I say that things are really good. This is insanely good. I have never. So, okay. It is my dream. My dream setup is not to run Logic. It's not to run a billion sample libraries. My dream is to run something like Dorico or Sibelius or Finale or Noteworthy or whatever, and just write music down like I do on paper, and to then be able to have the computer play that back and have it sound as good as when we work with high-end sample libraries and DAWs. That is my dream, because that is how I would much prefer to compose. Now, it needs to be able to, like, in my dream scenario, I'd be able to still use the DAW thing, just sort of like, recording it in with a keyboard, fine. This is as close to that dream as I've ever gotten, because this is a iPad program where you can use the pencil to basically write it in, and then it has handwriting recognition that turns it into a computer engraved score. So you write a whole note and it puts a computer whole note in there. It doesn't just leave it right as your whole note. It makes it look nice. But the really cool thing is that they are offering third-party sample libraries from some developers, some little tiny developers you may have heard of. There's this like little English outfit called Spitfire. There's this little German outfit called Berlin. There's this little American outfit called what are the Cinesamples?
Yep.
Just little guys, right? Like not no, these are like major libraries. And the cool thing is that they've completely reprogrammed them from scratch for StaffPad, and the
Nice.
playback is extraordinary. I have been using every engraving software pretty much ever written by humans ever since I got into composing, trying to find something that can play back nice written scores beautifully. And this is leaps and bounds ahead of everything. I mean, there are times where I could almost replace Logic with this,
Nice.
because it sounds so good. Yeah, I'm just really blown away by it. It's not cheap to get into. I think the program on iOS itself is like $89, and the libraries are like $100 each, which, I mean, go try to
Right.
buy Cinematic, or not Cinematic, go try to buy Cinestrings for $99. You can't. But yeah, I love this. It's so nice to be able to. I was on the plane and I was composing, and not in like the Christian Henson, laptop with like a tiny little MIDI controller and all this
Right.
crap all over the. He always shows like his mobile setup, and I'm always just like, that looks so awful, Christian. I don't know how you do this. No, just on an iPad, just like I was writing on paper. It's like amazing. Now, so let's talk about the downsides of this. The handwriting recognition, it requires you to understand what StaffPad expects you to write. So, you might write a whole note and like it just doesn't recognize it, or it throws it away. You have to figure out exactly what's causing its problem. So the handwriting recognition is not perfect. You have to, like I said, you have to kind of write to the program. It's very picky about, for example, like a line that's supposed to be straight, like a note stem. You really need to draw it pretty straight. If it's got a little curve in it, it's gonna have a hissy fit at you. Pretty easy to get around. They've got a ton of help videos up. If you just watch their help videos, 99% of those issues in my experience have been washed away by just watching their help videos and seeing, oh, it expects me to write like that. Okay. There's a bunch of people who there was some guy on VI Control who had posted a video of him writing in, and he gave you some tips and tricks about writing a quarter rest can be a pain. So you just write the letter S, right, and it turns it into a quarter rest. That's something it's an iPad thing, so there's not a lot of, like, everything's just like meaningless icons, pictures of things, so it can be hard to know what those all do. So really you got to read the documentation. The playback is not absolutely 100% perfect, but it's really close. It's I would say it's 80% of the way there with most of the libraries. It sounds stunning.
Did this just come out? Or
it just came out for
okay.
so StaffPad has been out for a while, the actual program, and I've actually looked into it, but then it was like, it was for a long time it was only on Surface. You had to own a Microsoft Surface, which I'm not going to buy a Surface just for this one program.
Right.
Although I came really close. But they just released it for iOS, and that's when they added all these third-party sample developers.
Nice.
And so that was not in even the Windows version before.
Okay.
So basically they rewrote it from scratch so that it could run on both Windows and iOS. And that's when they added, and then with that, they added all these sample libraries.
Cool. Imagine a year from now what it's going to be like.
Oh, yeah. And it's still a little buggy. I've had a crash a couple of times when, I was trying to add an accent and then the thing crashed. Now, on iOS, that's not as big of a deal, right? It saves pretty much constantly. Whenever you make a change, it's already saved. So, you just restart the program, move on with your life. But yeah, it's a little crashy. I've heard on Windows there's a couple of crashy. They've had some rocky stuff. Like they put out an update a couple of days after it released, and it was kind of it was kind of a bad update, and they had to like pull it and put a new one out because it was really bad. But I mean, you can accept that that's going to be a thing and just like revel in how great this is and what the possibilities are, or if that's not your thing, you don't want to deal with that, this isn't for you. But this also isn't for people who don't write music down on paper. I mean, whenever I start something serious, I mean, sometimes I'll sit down at the DAW and just play something in and get a thing. But if I'm trying something serious, like I'm writing a video game score, or I'm writing a thing, I'm always starting on paper anyway. So this is just like a little bit closer, bringing those two worlds a little bit closer. And, they're very responsive. I had some problems downloading a couple of the third-party libraries that I bought, and they got back to me immediately and said, hey, we're pushing an update tomorrow to fix that, which was great. It fixed the update. So they seem like they're really they're very responsive and are putting out updates really fast, which is really good to see. It's not like they put this product out and then I have no one's heard of radio silence for a month. That's not what's happening. No, they're definitely on it and then really, really working to improve it. This is an amazing program. Again, especially if you start from writing stuff down
paper,
on paper, it's stunning. So, I mean, and so as a and this is a composition tool, all right? This is designed to allow you to make a make a composition of music, right? An idea that starts. It's not going to replace Dorico or Sibelius because it can't do all of the extended notations, and the notation in it's not quite as pretty as an engraving program. But it's amazing, and as a composer, like, I write different kinds of music when I'm writing down or working in like Dorico or Sibelius than when I'm working in a DAW. It's just the way it is. Like, it's a lot easier for me to, just the simple fact that, like, in most notation programs, you can grab a phrase and move it up and down diatonically within the staff, not chromatically, right?
Right.
Like, just that one thing is like a huge changes how I write.
Yeah.
And so stuff like this is really helpful for me. And then I can see it written down, and then if I wanted to program it into a DAW, it's written down, right? Yep. So that's kind of where I come from on it, is that, like, I write better music when I'm actually like
On
looking
paper.
at written
Yeah.
music, right?
Yeah.
So for me, this is amazing. Now, if you're a DAW person, this
Like
isn't
me.
for you.
Yeah.
But this is, I mean, the playback is amazing. I posted in the Discord just a track I did on an airplane, and it sounds like something that I would have spent, half a day programming in and tweaking all the expression data and moving the stupid legato transitions around and blah blah blah. No, it was just like write it out, press export, done. It was
Cool.
amazing.
That's my dream. Like I would love to be able to write on paper, write music out, just like what I hear in my head onto paper. But I don't know how to do that because I never learned. I mean, yeah. So it's one of those things. Like it's a dream for me, but I'd have to learn how to write music. So it's like, okay, yeah.
Which is hard. I mean,
Yeah.
it's multiple independent like skills that you have to kind
Oh
of
yeah.
really
It's like-
develop like 4 skills and then bring them all together, and that's hard.
Right. Yeah.
That's really hard.
Because
Yeah.
I've always been an ear person. I've always heard music and just listened to my ear, and that's how I do it. And if it sounds good to my ear, it is good, or I think it's good. My opinion. But that I'm just saying, I'm an ear person. That's how I
Right.
got started in
Well, the
music.
thing about the cool thing about something like this is that you would get better at that. I mean, I'm
Right.
not saying, Todd, go out and buy an iPad Pro and get this and spend
No,
this
yeah.
something you're not going to use. But like something like this, that's what's cool about it too, is that it can really help your ear training, right? Because you're writing something down and then hearing it, and then you get that you get that instant feedback.
Yep.
So that can be really good for
Yeah.
ear.
I mean, trust me, I would always start it, and then it just kind of dwindles. I'm like, whatever. That's
Totally
what
get it. I totally get it. It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
And there are
Now
times
it's
when I
hard.
don't want to deal with it, right?
Exactly.
There's times
No,
when I'm just like,
yeah.
I just want to play it in.
Yeah, because it's like
And
I
this
want to
does
write
not
music.
have like you cannot hook up like a keyboard to your iPad
Okay.
and record into this. I do not believe.
Not yet.
So
That's
not
what I'm saying.
yet.
Like, where are they going to
Right.
go with this? Because I mean,
Right.
if they're doing it now, then obviously that's their goal to get what you want. I just want to
think
write it on paper and it plays for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think their goal is. It seems like their goal is to be sort of something that you would see in studios, because they also
Okay.
have features where like you can have one iPad be like the master tablet, and then have a bunch of iPads
Connected.
that follow it.
Okay.
So like you could like do a rehearsal, and the conductor would basically, and like any changes to the score that the
Right.
conductor makes, everyone sees,
Yeah.
right?
So it's
And
not
I
like
think that's why
papers,
they're
yeah,
doing the
yeah.
playback too, is that like when you go to do a recording session, a lot of times you're playing back a click, you're maybe playing back the other parts, the synth versions of other parts for people, because maybe you're recording just your strings today and you want them to hear the brass, so you've got what are called prelays that are playing back for them so they can hear the other parts.
Mhm.
So that seems like something this is kind of moving toward, right, where you could just do prelays, so just play back the brass while we record these string parts.
Right.
And use this cool like sync system where everything's synced up. And I cannot tell you the number of times I'm sure that in like a recording session, people are like, hey, violas, can we move that B at beat 1 to an A sharp or whatever, right? And like in this, you could just literally do it and sync it immediately right there. So I think that's another thing they're kind of moving toward. It's kind of like that kind of an environment where you would go into a studio and they would have this set up.
Yeah,
for all
which
the
makes
musicians.
sense. It's like, hey, bring
Yeah.
it into the technical world. That makes more sense. Like, because they still print out scores, and then they have to change it manually. It's like, nope, you can just look at your iPad.
Well, and
Yeah.
on this they have like a layer. You just click on a layer and you can add notes to it that aren't handwriting. They could like add dynamics or like, hey, we need to bow this up bow or whatever.
Right.
So that seems to be kind of something they're going for too. So I don't know. I really hope these people succeed, because this is one of my favorite
cool.
things.
Like, it
Yeah,
sounds
it's
exactly what
really
you've been talking about for.
And it's amazing. Like again, like running Berlin strings on an iPad.
Right.
Like, who would have
That's
thought that was
insane.
even possible?
Oh, think about 5-10 years from now, like the idea of a computer, like as we know it, because these are like our kids, they're growing up with tablets, and it's just this, what, a computer? I'm gonna sit down with a keyboard and a mouse. Like it's archaic, I mean. So yeah, who knows where we're gonna be in 10 years from now? You're gonna probably have a whole symphony on your iPad, but no, that's cool, man. I know
Great,
that's
right? Because then you can compose at the beach,
Yeah,
or on an airplane,
anywhere.
or,
Yeah.
without having to drag these huge setups around. My setup can't move from my house.
Right. The same here.
So
Oh, I forgot to mention in our getting started is get a good desk.
yeah, I don't know. I used a really terrible desk at first.
But you know what I mean? Like it makes a difference
Yeah.
when you have a nice.
It does. It
You know,
does.
because if you're sitting at your chair in a good chair,
Good chair. Yeah.
that's other things that could go wrong, with your health. So anyway, all right. Well, I'll move on to my pick of the week. I got two, but one I really want to stress is I've been getting more back into ambient and guitar music again, which is basically where I started, and I went out and bought Albion 1 because I needed strings, good sounding strings. And then it led me down the whole path that I've been on. Like, oh, well, maybe I should get into film score and, all that stuff. So, but that's how it started for me because I was doing ambient guitar stuff, like videos and stuff, and that's I was falling into that, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool if I had strings and stuff. Anyway, so I got this pedal from Chase Bliss Audio. I love their stuff. If you're a guitar player, if you don't, I've never heard of them, check out their stuff. They make amazing pedals. But it's called Mood. And what it is, it's a really weird pedal. So there's the way Chase Bliss makes their pedals. They have two sides to their pedals. They have two buttons, and one side affects. There's one. So there's like two things in the pedal, and
Okay.
one side is kind of a micro looper. The other side is like a delay, and it has reverb, delay, and this thing called slip. And then on the right channel is your micro looper, which has an envelope, tape, or stretch. So stretch does basically if you record like a 3-second loop, it will stretch it and kind of
Oh, that's cool.
just keep kind of playing it. And then the tape is like just like a tape, like a tape recorder. You're recording the tape and it's just a loop. Will play. I can't remember how long of a loop you can do, but that's determined. They have this the knob called the clock. So what the clock is, it's kind of like from 2K to 64K, and if you move it to like 64K, it will like speed it up and give you the best sounding quality loop. But then if you go down to 2K, it kind of makes it like lo-fi. You know what I mean? So it's kind of what it's doing, the clock
Yeah, yeah,
speed.
yeah.
And then you can't record as long with the 2K.
Sure.
Or your loop is not as good. It's kind of grainy, hissy,
Sure.
like old
Yeah,
tapes.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so then you can adjust the length and the modify and stuff, and then on the right or the left channel, sorry, is where your reverb and delay is, and you can set your time and stuff like that. So I've been kind of experimenting, kind of made a challenge for myself. I kind of got this from Andy Olfling. He's an ambient guitar guy. He's on YouTube. His project is called Lowercase Noises. This is the guy that got me into ambient stuff because I'm a guitar player. I found his channel. Oh my God, more than 5 years ago. I just stumbled on it one day, and it just really like when you find an artist or somebody and it just like gets into you, and they're just like, oh my God, that's what I got to do. That's what happened to me. It
Yeah.
just because I never heard that music before. I never heard somebody could do this stuff with a guitar. I'm a rock guy, metal, like that's what I just know guitar is, rock. And I heard this stuff and I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it just got me and inspired me. So he was doing this on his live stream. He did it like I think it was a year ago. He just talked about like, oh, I'm just trying this thing out. And I was like, dude, that's amazing. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try to write a couple songs just using one pedal. One pedal. It's a micro looper and I can put the stuff in here, and it's forcing me to be creative. And that's it, dude. I'm not using synths or nothing on top of it. I'm just using this pedal to create all the sounds. And it's very cool.
That is
Um,
really cool.
Hopefully I can make an EP, and if I do, I will let everybody know on the podcast. But right now I'm in the process of writing and I'm learning the pedals because I just got it like a month ago. And there's a lot to learn. And Chase Bliss Audio, their pedals are amazing. They have so you can do ramp features, so like different ramp stuff, and they have these like buttons on the top of the pedal that you can switch on and off. And the
Hmm.
ramp feature on the pedal will do those things. So there's like time, length, like the ones on there, and you can make it so it does different stuff. But anyway, their pedals are amazing. I have a couple of them for a guitar player. If you don't know who Chase Bliss Audio is, check them out. Very reasonable price pedal too. But like I said, this is just some challenge that I gave into myself, and it's been really cool, man. It's been forcing me to get really creative and try things and do things because
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm just using my guitar. I'm using my compressor on my pedal board. Other than that, there's no other effects. It's all coming from the one pedal. So it's sometimes you get like, oh, I already did that sound. So you kind of have to like just get creative, man. And
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
could
It
see people
forces you.
using it as a film score, just like plugging it in as an outboard, like to a synth or a piano or
Yeah,
something. Like seriously, check it out. I think
will
um,
do.
it's really cool. And then I just wanted to throw out there, I got a Moog Mother 32. um,
Nice, nice.
I'm learning, and wow, yeah, there's a lot to learn because I'm not a synth guy at all. and
Yeah.
it was reasonably priced, and like as for a synth, I was like, hey man, let's try it out. And it's old school synth, so there's no keyboard, it's just got the kind of like buttons that are basically, C to, what was it, C to A, C, 1 octave. And you can program your patterns and stuff like that. So kind of like that John Carpenter kind of old school synth stuff, man. Or Pink Floyd, I guess, if you want that stuff. So could do stuff like that. But yeah, so this is like my introduction to like real synth, because I have Korg Minilug and a Mini Nova, and they kind of have some of those features, but this is like real synth, like learning how to do frequencies,
Right.
and all that. So I was like, it was just a challenge, and I was like, oh, cool, just trying new things, man, just expanding my music, and just on a different path, I guess, just finding what else is out there, just seeing what happens. So that's basically my 2 picks. And that's pretty much it, I guess, for this episode. A pretty lengthy episode. I think we covered a lot. And we, like I said, we apologize for missing last month, but just life happened. We just couldn't get together, and sometimes it's hard for us to find the time. But we'll be back next month and with another
I got
episode.
up before dawn for you people.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, be thanked. No,
Yeah, we're recording this on President's Day, and
it was up anyway.
kind of early for Curtis because he's 2 hours behind us. So he got up a little early for this, but
Acknowledge my tiredness. No,
yeah,
it's fine. I was going to be up anyway, so
and
it was
Chris-
perfect. It worked out great.
No, it worked out perfect. And Chris had to leave early, so that's why he's not here at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
But we got all his parts in. But anyway, we wanted to thank you for listening to the episode. And like I said, if you want to get in touch with us, we have a Discord channel. You can find all this information on composingmadesimple.com. Check it out there. You can find links to my YouTube, Curtis's, and Chris, and find out what we're up to and our Twitters and all that stuff. But thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode of Composing Made Simple podcast. Thanks again, everybody.